Me and your best friend, we had a thing, but that was something. She real as fuck, you could've told her, but you did wrong. Instead, you left her out for dead, girl, is your head gone? Fuck is the loyalty? Tell me who the fuck taught you your loyalty? How you try to fuck me and then foil me?
Hey guys, it's your girl, Crystal Nicole. So before we get into part 2 of how Tory Lanez was railroaded, we're going to do a quick recap of what we went over in part 1. So, what we learned in the last video was that police left out certain things from their reporting, like this report where they mention the fighting, but they don't mention how Sean Kelly had named Kelsey as the flasher, or Detective Stogner, the lead detective, who left out everything Sean Kelly said in his report and only wrote that Tory and Megan had been in a verbal argument before the shots were fired. And how Sean Kelly had told the DA that it seemed as if he wasn't really interested in anything that he had to say when he spoke to Detective Stogner. Or how they wrote a public report seeking more information on the case because witnesses weren't cooperating, even though all witnesses who called the police spoke to police right after the incident. We learned that TMZ was the major source leading the smear campaign against Tory right out the gate. They too were apparently never told about a fight between Megan and Kelsey, and were told that witnesses weren't cooperating instead of telling them what those witnesses had actually reported to police. They were already naming Tory as the shooter through anonymous sources, and Megan and her team were pointing the fingers at him on social media all before Megan came out and named Tory herself as the shooter or even gave any details about that night for anybody else to be coming out with them unless she or Kelsey were the ones telling these anonymous sources these details. And that's where we are going to start for part 2 of how Tory Lanez was railroaded. So let's get into that. So as we learned in part 1, Megan had a habit of responding to things being said on social media about the incident, and this kept occurring. So much so that she ended up shooting herself in the foot while doing so. So pay attention because it starts here.
How the fuck you get shot in your foot, don't hit no bones of tennis? How the fuck your team is trying to pay me as some whole menace?
So thanks to Tory's album proclaiming his innocence and giving out bits and pieces of the story, and once again asking how Megan had gotten shot in her feet without hitting any bones or tendons, he had been asking this because Megan had said in her live,
I was shot in both of my feet and I had to get surgery to get the shit taken out, get the bullets taken out. And thank God that the bullets didn't touch bones. They didn't break tendons. Like I know my mama, my daddy, my granny had to be looking out for me with that one, because where the bullets hit at, it missed everything. But the motherfuckers was in there.
Articles started coming out claiming thanks to Tory's album questioning her story, people were now doubting Megan's story about being shot. So, in typical stallion fashion, to rush to get the attention off of that, they had an anonymous source and medical records come out to back up her story almost immediately. Complex posted on Twitter that medical records showed Megan was shot in the foot. They linked an article that led to an anonymous source claiming that Tory had yelled "dance bitch" before firing at her feet, and in a desperate attempt to fix his mistake, he offered hush money to cover it up. They claimed to be coming out because of Tory's album, making the public doubt Megan and mock her, and it wasn't funny. And Complex had reached out to Tory's people, and a representative categorically denied that he ever said this to her, which Kelsey and Sean Kelly backed up on the stand at trial. They never linked the medical report. So on September 26th, the Shade Room posted an article claiming that they saw the medical report that Complex had posted about and said that Megan was admitted with a gunshot injury and that they treated her for a gunshot injury. They said they found shrapnel fragments in her left heel. They treated her with irrigation and debridement and determined her ready for discharge on July 14th. Her discharge said gunshot injury, and this should clear the air on if Megan was shot. And then they claimed that the medical records would be public once the case begins because Tory still had not been charged at this time. There was no medical report a part of this article. If it was, it had been removed. Now, we have quite a few problems with these reports, but let's just start with the medical report. The Shade Room obviously did not report everything said in that report. They just went with the second half that made Megan a victim of a gunshot injury to her foot, not feet. What they left out was the beginning of that report that said Megan was presented with foot pain and lacerations. She told them that she was barefoot at a party that night when she heard a loud noise and immediately felt pain to her feet. She thought she had stepped on glass. She had no numbness or weakness. She came to the hospital by ambulance and she was admitted into the emergency room. Don't make fun of me of the way I say ambulance, where her wounds were washed and dressed. They stated there was no obvious conspicuous involvement and she received antibiotics, tetanus, and they cleared her to leave by July 14th, and that she was neurovascularly intact. I can't say that word, I'm so sorry, but y'all know what I mean. So to repeat this again, Megan came in, said it was glass. They looked at her wound, determined it was glass. They washed and wrapped it, gave her some meds, and then they gave her a discharge date. They said that she had no nerve damage. So police wrote that in their report and they left the hospital. Now, after they left, it was recommended that Megan undergo a deeper debridement to get any glass pieces, I guess they thought might still be in her foot because she's still lying about being shot. They don't mention any x-rays was performed. They just said that through clinical findings, symptoms, and desired quality of life, they recommended this procedure to her, and she agreed. They said that she had a 1.5 centimeter wound on her back ankle, and they went in and they removed a fragment that couldn't have been much bigger than that wound. And then her left foot had 3 1 centimeter cuts, and they probed into those and gathered 2 1 centimeter fragments, and then they removed those from that foot. Now, these were literally really tiny metallic pieces that they pulled from her feet. As you can tell from the cut on the back of her right foot. But somehow Megan interpreted this as
I get to the hospital, the doctors do x-rays on my feet. Oh, ma'am, you got bullets in your feet, you got bullet fragments in your other foot.
Megan kept hurting the prosecution's case with the things she was saying that didn't match reports or witness statements or contradicted even her own statements. They never told her she had bullets in her feet. They never pulled bullets from her feet to tell her that. And what they did pull explained why she could be up twerking in pools and partying at strip clubs not too long after. So why exaggerate the story and lie about having nerve damage when the medical report contradicted that? Explains why those fragments went missing. Would be hard to paint the picture of the story she gave with those tiny little pieces they pulled out her foot. So, to combat Tory asking her how she managed to get shot in both feet without hitting any bones or tendons, she said,
You shot a 5'10" bitch with a 22. Talking about bones and tendons like them bullets wouldn't pellets. A pussy nigga with a pussy gun in his feelings. Okay,
now we've gone from glass to bullets to pellets to fragments, from both feet to one foot because her right foot literally had no damage, just a cut. She really was making the prosecution's case hard, I tell you. Now, the second problem we have is Megan never gave any details about Tory saying dance bitch until Gayle King 2 months before the trial. And the only other person she told this detail to was the lead detective Stogner, who didn't say anything about this until the preliminary hearing about a month after this. So we know the source got this from Megan or was Megan herself. She also never said anything about Tory offering her or Kelsey money herself until November, 2021 in her interview with GQ, where again, she refuses to go into details about Kylie's house or the argument in the car. She just claims that she never put her hands on anybody and had barely even said anything to Tory before it happened. So we know that the source got this from her or was Megan herself. Furthermore, Tory was not texting Megan while she was in surgery, as he was in jail at the time, and TMZ said he sent that apology text 15 hours after the fact. Now, this wouldn't be the first time that this story about texting during surgery, offering money, etc. would come up, which is how Megan ended up shooting herself in the foot later and exposing that this was indeed her. On September 29th, a Billboard article came out claiming that Tory and his team was pretending to be someone from 300 Entertainment, Megan's label, sending out emails trying to create a smear campaign, and that he was faking text messages between him and Megan. Now, why Tory or his team would be using Megan's label to send fake emails just doesn't make any sense. They could have just pretended to be any one of these anonymous sources to proclaim his innocence to the blogs. Maybe that's why they never showed anything that he allegedly sent in this article, just like they didn't show any of these fake texts that he was creating. Instead, they linked that heavy.com article with that anonymous source, who was Kelsey, allegedly, claiming Megan didn't want to testify and the prosecution didn't have a strong case to back up the smear campaign claims. Now, this Billboard article was really put out to let yet another anonymous source come out and tell Megan's story. And this source claimed that the incident happened following a disagreement between the two artists. Tory was supposed to be dropping her off at home with Kelsey. An argument ensued. He started calling her names, so she said she wanted to get out of the car. She walked away and he said, "Dance, bitch." He pulled a gun. He shot 4 times. 2 of those bullets hit her, 1 in each foot. The other 2 missed. Then Tory reached out after with that text. They add on that he was texting her this while she was in surgery. And he had also been calling her friends, day-to-day managers, and even security, offering money trying to make it right. Again, the same thing the previous source in Complex just told us verbatim with some added details. Now, this is where Megan starts shooting herself in the foot and exposing what the DA's plan was to charge Tory. They were going to use his apology text and phone call to Kelsey as their evidence that he committed this crime. As all of a sudden, these anonymous sources' focus was all on Tory's apology text, and they were exaggerating those details. And then J.A. Lee, or however you say her name, Megan's friend, exposed that jail call when she came out against Kelsey, although she lied and claimed that she heard Tory say all this to Kelsey through a voicemail, as she uses the same words he used in that call to Kelsey. "I was just too drunk," and lied and said Tory had apologized for shooting Megan. The same way Megan came out and lied on February 23rd, 2022, after the DNA results came out excluding Tory. She finally posted that apology text that we kept hearing about from all these sources and asked Tory what had he been apologizing for. She said the DA had all his texts and calls to Kelsey from jail begging Kelsey not to say anything. Tory never begged Kelsey not to say anything during that call, as we all heard. Just like he wasn't texting Megan during surgery, because that text came 15 hours later. Megan used the same wording that she used with the detective when telling him that Tory had been offering money in the driveway, begging them not to say anything. Now, we know Megan and Kelsey were both these anonymous sources running to the blogs because the sources coming out from July to August were coming out exposing what happened at Kylie's, exposing Megan and Tory had been sleeping together, how the argument was all about that, and constantly trying to let us know that it had all been an accident. Megan hadn't been intentionally shot. It was just fragments, and how the prosecution had a weak case due to all of Megan's changing stories and no evidence against Tory. All things Kelsey would say, since she was the shooter and refused to go down without Megan being held responsible for all her lies and being the cause of everything that happened that night. Which is what she said in her interview with the DA and in her diss track. She would not tell the truth unless Megan did. That's why she stayed silent. Now, all anonymous sources who came out in September were Megan. As like what we just went over, they kept giving us details about Megan being shot in both feet, Tory saying dance bitch, Tory apologizing while she was in surgery, Tory texting, calling Kelsey, her friends, and security, trying to get them to not say anything, and Tory offering money. All things that Megan had told the detective 4 days after this event, but had never said so herself before the sources did. She would only say things after the sources came out and said it first. Now, everyone keeps asking how come Tory never said anything. Like he said in his live and in his album, he had faith that Megan would come out and do the right thing. He didn't really believe that she was behind all of this. He figured that she was being pushed and misled into saying these things and through her label or whoever was in her ear. And even if she didn't come forward with the truth, he was just going to let the evidence speak for him so they could play through social media all they wanted to. He could prove that he didn't do this. There was no point in him coming out giving his side because they were already pointing the finger at him. Megan and her team were already slandering him through the media, and him trying to say it was Megan and Kelsey that night who did it would have just been denied and picked apart through the media to make him look more guilty than they were already making him look without charges even being pressed. So he stayed silent. However, that doesn't mean that he did not try to defend himself after they officially charged him for the assault, contrary to what most people believe. So let's go ahead and get into that. On November 16th, an article came out claiming that Megan said Tory begged her not to snitch on him. And Tory's team responded by saying that this was not true and he never tried to pay off any witnesses, and anybody coming out with those stories were lying. Point blank, period. On January 21st, 2021, an article came out claiming that Tory Lanez's charges had not been dropped, and this was due to some blogger coming out claiming that Tory Lanez's charges had been dropped because they did not know how to read the court documents. Tory Lanez's team immediately responded to this and said that it was false and told everybody that the blogger did not know how to read court documents. There was no truth to this, to just ignore it. Then Megan decided to post right behind him and starts accusing Tory once again of basically, trying to slander her and put out false stories, etc., etc. Like, again, pattern of behavior. On January 26, 2021, Tory tried to fight to speak, and this is when we first hear about someone else testing positive for GSR in that car and that he was implicating Kelsey. And he was mad that Megan and her team were allowed to just keep saying whatever they wanted to make him look guilty while him and his attorney was silenced, and it was denied. This would make the first time that he tried to let the evidence speak for him so he could name Kelsey without people claiming that he was lying about it. But he was denied. It wouldn't be until 11 months later that we finally hear about this fight between Megan and Kelsey, everything that the eyewitness saw, about the deceit from the police, excluding things from their reports, etc. So, of course, TMZ finally reported on this story after it came out during the preliminary hearing. And in typical stallion fashion, Megan immediately responded, blasting the article, claiming that they didn't do real journalism and their focus was all on a cat fight instead of her being shot while unarmed, never denying that this physical altercation wasn't true. She just didn't want us focusing on it. And in true TMZ fashion, TMZ quickly updated their article to back Megan up on her outrage, claiming that it didn't matter if there was a cat fight in the car. Megan was shot outside of the car to cover for Megan. They tried to manipulate and change the story to the girls were just arguing in the car. It's what happened outside the car that matters. So just ignore that part, guys. It's all irrelevant. So for the love of God, stop saying that Tory didn't tell his side. Tory should have took the stand. Tory should have did this, that, and the other. He let the evidence speak for him, which is what you do when you're charged with something you did not do in a court of law, not the court of social media who just wants the tea. He had an eyewitness who backed up that it was Kelsey. Kelsey tested positive for GSR. His DNA was not found on that weapon. There was female DNA on that weapon, just never tested because the DA refused to charge her or test her for anything. They had evidence photos of the bruises on both Megan and Kelsey to back up that fight. And it was reported by the blogs. It was repeated at trial. And yet here we are still acting as if none of these things happened, were said, matters, or even cast major doubt on him being the shooter. We still have people claiming we really don't know what happened that night, as if common sense isn't staring them right in the face. It's not that hard to comprehend from everything we've been given. These people just want to hear it from Tory's mouth so they have something else to tear apart, gossip about, and make content and money off of. We all know how to add, right? So let's put 2 and 2 together to get 4, and it's clear as day what happened here. The only reason it's not accepted is because nobody wants to look stupid for convicting him based off of false headlines and nothing but lies and omissions coming from Kelsey and Megan. I wonder, do any of you know how asinine you sound saying, yeah, everybody lied that night, but he still did it? If everybody lied and you still don't know what really happened, that you're still begging for him to speak about it, how did they prove beyond a reasonable doubt in court that he committed this crime if even you still don't have it figured out? Stop acting like Sean Kelly and Kelsey are the Black Plague and you'd have this all figured out by now. Anytime anything came out that made Tory look innocent, Megan came out and denied its truth, like she did after the preliminary hearing and like she did in February 2022 when the DNA reports came out. When Tory responded and said Megan couldn't lie and buy her way out of this one, Megan finally dropped that apology text herself. And Tory had responded back with, he apologized for smashing 2 best friends. And it was crazy how Megan had spun the story, the same thing that he said in his album. And you know what's funny? I don't understand why so many people are finding it hard to believe that he apologized for actually causing the girls to fight by bringing up him and Megan's secret to Kelsey, who knew nothing about it and who had been messing with him before Megan. Both Megan and Kelsey told the DA and the detectives this very same story. They both said that, yeah, well, Tory was the one who basically amped the argument up in the car because he's the one who brought up this secret, which caused Kelsey to get upset. And this is what escalated everything to that fight, which led to that daggone shooting by Kelsey. Does that not make sense? When I say it, does it sound like, oh, that's not plausible? Because I know it sounds a lot better than, oh, he shot me for no reason. Oh, I mean, he shot me because I insulted his music career. Now, what y'all need to do is start coming up with an explanation for why both Megan and Kelsey keep denying that they had this fight that night. Why do y'all keep denying it? And Megan, you had the nerve to talk about it in your diss track. If it's not about that, what does this part mean? I thought a bitch who got her chain snatched, caught a loss, had something to say. Didn't Kelsey get her chain snatched off her neck that night? Isn't this the same chain that she's also denying was snatched in her diss response to you? Didn't Kelsey turn around 2 years later and go tell the DA, oh, you know what? I do remember that chain being snatched off my neck that night, but it wasn't Megan, it was Tory. To Megan's friend coming out saying that Kelsey lied about Tory beating her ass, it was Megan who did it. Megan, if you and Kelsey were not fighting that night, how did you get that knot on your forehead that we can clearly see in the ambulance video? Because you never say that Tory put his hands on you. All you ever said was that he shot you and then they helped you get back into the car. That's it. So where did the knot come from? Y'all truly believe that Tory put all of these scratches on Kelsey's legs? That Tory put all of these bruises all over Kelsey's legs and she doesn't even remember him punching, kicking, doing anything to her legs at all. All she said was that he slapped her and dragged her to the ground by her hair. That's it. But yet, when we look at her face, there was nothing wrong with her face. All of her bruises are below the waist. Oh, excuse me, my bad. She had bald spots. She was missing acrylic nails. Also, all things that usually happen during a brutal girl fight. So until all of you little Megan supporters can come out and explain why they keep lying about this fight, then y'all have nothing to say. Because that fight gives Kelsey motive for why she would have been the one who pulled out a gun and shot Megan. And if that's not the case, then name all this evidence that they pulled out in court that proved that Tory did this. Because again, all they had was a phone call and a text message of him admitting to nothing.
Yeah, who I'm taking shots at? Bitch, I'm busting you. I'm talking to that same bitch that crashed that boat on 42. It's a shame we here today. Truth be told, it's cause of you. Couldn't control your little feelings. Look what dick is costing you. It was all good, yeah, about a week ago. Shout out Bobby's murder, but this bitch is really cheap. If I was the one with the gun, you would've heard about a murder. Said her back was turned, but that girl know who really hurt her. Never been a jealous friend, and the people really know it. If you would've kept it solid, then I would've been told it. See, I really thought I knew you, thought that you would keep it G. If you wanna talk gangsta, bitch, I'm really from the street. Imagine lying to the DA saying I took some hush money. Put a muzzle on your friends, y'all acting like some crash dummies. Got my chain snatched? Damn, here you go lying. Yeah, A-list celeb, you doing too much trying. Where I get this money from? Bitch, you knew I was a hustler. The way she did 1501, shoulda knew I couldn't trust you. Protect black women, huh? But you sending threats to me. Damn, I thought that you was solid, now the joke's on me. Damn, I ain't wanna have to do this, but you steady shooting shots. They said if I spoke that a sex tape could drop. Was never supposed to be against each other, this what y'all made it. I'ma still live it up, yeah, I know y'all really hate it. Sucking dick behind my back, who really on their knees? You an overachiever, all you do is succeed. Claiming you a pimp, huh, but you slipping on your Mac. And are you lying to your label, do they really know what happened?
Who shot you?
Cause you know it wasn't me, I was 10 toes down whenever you had beef. It's a goddamn shame, all you had to do was clear your best